He moved up here in 1957 and then graduated from Kernville High School in 1959. He went to Bakersfield College after that and started doing a little TV station work. Next he went to San Francisco State and changed his major to filmmaking. And within a few years was filming, editing, and producing various types of video. In 1978, he decided he wanted to go to Hollywood to see if he could make it there, which he did. At the end of his career there, which was about 1988 to 1992, he was one of the main producers and filmmakers for the show Night Court. And then Chuck had fond memories of Kernville during the years he was up here, and in 2002 returned to retire here. So Chuck Barree, our Kern River Valley resident videographer, and Tammy, his wife, has a couple words to say.
I just want to make everyone aware of something before he takes you on the tour. Although I work closely with him in nearly all aspects of the filmmaking, this model is all him. It's a one-man show. In Hollywood, there are teams of people working on a project like this. It's just, he's done the creation. That's why it's taken so long. But what I want you to pay attention to, knowing that, when you move through the town, and he's taking you on the tour, pay attention to the detail. Every building he has built from scratch. Every building you will see in this town, he has built from scratch. You can't just go online and find a building from Old Kernville and pop it in there. Almost as if, sometimes board by board, as if he was building it for real. Custom windows, custom doors. He's worked with Google Maps and plot maps and all of this to make sure things are in the right spot. It has taken him a long time, but he has worked on details. And I just want you to be aware of that when you move through the town and you see, you know, a pile of lumber, an old rakeway in a yard, or things like that. He just paid attention to detail, but every single building he has created. And I think it'll be viewed for decades, if not longer. So, thank you, Chuck.
Thank you, my sweet Tammy. We're partners in all of this stuff that we do. She's made it possible for me to do this. I fell into a deep, dark rabbit hole when I talked to myself about 4 years ago when we're contemplating the next episode of our Wild West Country History Project based on Bob Howard's books, and decided to focus on Old Kernville and thought, you know, the software is available now and affordable. I could maybe create a virtual 3D model of Old Kernville, and it maybe take a few months to do something like that. I got the software and I started playing. Well, it's been 4 years, and it really isn't done yet.
For 2 years I've been hearing, it's almost done.
But Tammy has made it possible for me to do it. I mean, it's almost a full-time job for me, and she feeds me, and she researches stuff if I have questions. She's really...
But honestly, ladies, is it that hard to have your husband just disappear for 4 or 5 hours?
So anyway, just a couple things. What you're looking at right here is sort of an aerial view of Old Kernville. North is up, and this is kind of oriented as the maps are that we put on the chairs. So if you want to, this can help you orient yourselves as we go through this. What I'm going to do is give you a quick, just a couple minutes of this is the actual model itself. I can move through it, and navigate it using the mouse, but it's always kind of jerky and it's hard to do subtle stuff. But in the model, there's software that allows you to create videos and to make them very smooth. You create start points and end points, and the computer does these nice moves. So that's what I'm going to show you first. And it's about 40 minutes, and it's a tour of the entire town. And then we can play with this model after that if you want. And if you have questions, you want to go examine a certain building or part of town or whatever, we can go look at it actually in the model. But so I'm going to switch over to the video part. And so these videos that you're gonna see, this 40-minute clip, is made from the model. And one thing about the model, as we researched it, all of it's based on photographs, and based on, there's, years ago when we were doing, this Wild West Country project, I mean, lots of things have come up. Here's a guy came to me several years ago with a Corps of Engineers tract survey map of Old Kernville circa 1945 in preparation for buying everybody out and moving to town. And this is a list of the names of the owners of every one of the properties on this, keyed by numbers. So we took this map and we synchronized it with a Google Earth image of Old Kernville and scaled it, and then we began building the model on the track map. So, and then we used photographs. Now there are thousands of photographs of the old town, but most of them, up to the time we got into this, were the ones you see in the museum, and the main buildings, the buildings on Main Street, the buildings on Nellie Dent Street, the businesses, A. Brown Store, the school, so on. There's lots of photographs of all of those. But the whole residential area, the area, all of this area in here, we had no idea what was in there. I mean, it was houses we knew, and also over here, this area. And one day here at the annex, Diane and Jean and Charlie came up with a folder of pictures from Artist Walker's collection. They called me and said, hey, we got something you might be interested in. Well, in this folder were pictures, 3 views of almost every house in Old Kernville. All these photographed by the Corps of Engineers. How artists ended up with it, we're not sure. And it's not complete. It's about 50 or 60. But it really helped us flesh out what these buildings that we had no idea. All you could see is a roof in an aerial photo, and that's about it. So using that, we were able to really flesh out the thing. And what we did was we would take a picture to build this, put it up on the computer screen, take a pair of dividers and go, okay, that's a doorway. And most doorways, even in those days, are about 80 inches high. So with a pair of dividers, okay, there's a yardstick. Now the building is this wide, this high. Oblique angles, that doesn't quite work, but you can do some guesswork. So we started modeling each building from photographs that way. And then as Tammy said, because I'm a Virgo and I get anal, I start, there's a rake. Well, I got to put a rake on there, so I got to do this. So fortunately, all of those kinds of things, rakes and bicycles and cars and hinges and latches and doorknobs, you can download those. Those are little component parts that you can download through the software. So I didn't have to create those. But piles of lumber, all of that, most of that stuff we created. So anyway, using the photographs and doing this, we built each building. And so I'll quit talking now for a minute. And also one final thing. Most of the photographs are black and white, very few color photographs of the town. So a lot of times I'm guessing at what the colors are. And what's on the ground. Is it grass or what? We use an old dry grass texture for much of the town. There is some green grass and flowers and rose bushes and stuff where they existed. We knew we could see them in black and white. But again, the colors of the buildings and all of that, there was a lot of green in Old Kernville. Fences were green, all that. We have some photographs. But the colors of the buildings, a lot of it's just guesswork. And so anyway, we'll get on with it here. So this is the video we made last night. Took us up until midnight to complete this of a tour. And I'll talk through a lot of it. And if you have your maps, it'll help you orient here and there when you're seeing something. I'll try to help you. And so here we go. And there's no sound on it, though I'll just be talking. So this is coming into town from the south end. And this is in the late 1940s. And the house on the right belonged to a guy named J.C. Howe. He was a mountain man, trapper, packer, mountain lion hunter, and a friend of Ken Wortley's. On the left, that's the Tibbetts home. And the Tibbetts were a prominent family in Old Kernville. That house is quite possibly what is called Mrs. Cummings' Hotel originally, which is described in Beneath the Lake in a Havilah Weekly Courier article. The guy describes coming into Kernville from the south in 1868, and Mrs. Cummings is described at this location up against the hill. And in talking to Monica Lambert the other day, they own the Tibbetts home, got moved up to Old Kernville. We think that yes, indeed, their home may well have originally been Cummings' Hotel because it had some features in the house that you wouldn't normally put in a house. It's more suitable to a hotel. So anyway, that's a little discovery we just recently made. And then it became the Tibbetts home. We're almost 100% certain that it was Cummings. So here we're coming up into Main Street. There's on the left is the last version of the Kernville garage. There's Longstreet's bar. Here's the Mountain Inn on the right. And we're coming up on Don's Place. And that corner Nellie Dent and Main Street, now we're transitioning to the 1860s. So that, where Don's Place was, you just saw it, now you're seeing the reception saloon. That's where it was, that corner. So the reception saloon, now we're in 1868, and you see the buildings on the right, it's no longer the Mountain Inn. It's, well, it was a series of hotels, there were 3 or 4 names. We'll get into some of that later. So now we're going back out to see what it looked like many years earlier. And how it changed. Now that building on the left there, that's called Blumenthal's store. And who knew? I didn't until we got into this and recently discovered there was a store right there called Blumenthal's. He was competing with Andy Brown. And we'll look at that in more detail in a bit. Again, there's the Tibbetts home on the left, formerly Mrs. Cummings' Hotel. Now here's Blumenthal's store again from a different angle, zooming in on it. And the building on the left, let's see, oh wait, okay, well, we'll go by that. Now this is from the hill at the north end of town. We're looking south. Now that building on the extreme left, I think, is Shafter's Brewery. According to Beneath the Lake, there was a brewery. And it's described in that Havilah article. Shafter also owned a stable, and that's described, that's at the north end of town, but his brewery was at the upper end of town. And I'll explain why in a few minutes. You'll see why I think that building on the left exists. There's really only one picture that could be that building, and it's from a different angle. You'll see in a minute. But anyway, it was across the street from right here. This is that's Peterson Hall, which later became the Oddfellows Hall. And here's the Peterson home and the Kernville Hotel, which we'll have more detailed pictures of. And this is the first school built in the 1860s, the first Kernville Elementary School. And so here's a different angle on that. There's the school, here's the Peterson Hall, the Kernville Hotel, and the Peterson House, and here's what I think was the brewery. And over there, that's Andy Brown's barn, and this is a Pasco and Danner stable, which existed there for a while. So, can we turn off the overhead lights? They're washing out the screen just a little bit. Maybe it'll be, if that's okay with everybody. Yeah. Now here's the school.
Just, I know you,
Yeah.
spatially and through time, you've got this nailed. And I'm kind of keeping up spatially, but do help people as far as the direction you're looking.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so now we're down ground level, looking at the school from this would be the east side of the school. Main Street would be behind us. And this is matched with here's an actual photograph of that school. Now we're at Main Street. We're on the west side. We're looking northwest. And there's the reception saloon at the corner of Delhi Dent and Main. And just going to push on this. This is the Olympia Saloon, which was on the left side. This is in the 1860s. And that barn behind the reception saloon, that was a blacksmith shop owned by, I think, let's see, I have a name here somewhere. Can you look at that, honey? That,
Shafter.
yeah, Shafters, that's mentioned in the Havilah article, and there's only one picture of it, and you'll see it in a minute here. And again, it's so fun doing this because now you see that, I've looked at this picture 1,000 times and never considered that building right there that you just showed in the middle, this building. That's, according to a description from the Havilah, that would be Shafter's blacksmith shop. And that's the only picture of it. It's in the background of this picture of the reception saloon. But it's just wonderful discovering stuff like this. And you start putting little pieces together and all of a sudden something becomes clear. Now here's a picture from around 1870. This is in beneath the lake. This is from the north end of town, looking southeast a little bit. The lake would be in the background if we were looking. That's Cook's Peak up there and all that. And the house, this is called the Star House. That's in a lot of photographs. Don't know who these buildings belong to. This is the only picture of what I believe is that brewery. It's sitting right exactly where it is described. It's described from entering the south end of town, going north in that article. Shafter owned the blacksmith shop, which we just saw. And then he says, at the head of Main Street, so if you're going north through Kernville and you're at the south end, the head of Main Street would be at the north end. And he says at the head of Main Street was a brewery, also owned by Shafter, the same guy that owned the blacksmith shop. So I looked at this picture. This is the absolute top end of Main Street. I mean, you might consider this Main Street too, but this is where the Kernville Hotel is, and Peterson Hall, and I'm pretty sure that's the brewery. But, some of it's guesswork, of course.
Chuck, what's the number of the brewery on our map?
It's not shown on the map, but it would be roughly where that number 16 is. No, 24.
24, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, excuse me. It'd be more like where 31 is. It's on Main Street. See number 19 there on Main Street, that's the Oddfellows Hall. That's the last location for the Oddfellows Hall. But that was formerly Peterson Hall, which is right there. That's Peterson Hall, which later became the Oddfellows Hall after the Kernville Hotel burned. We'll see more detail on that in a minute. So that brewery, it's right about across from where number 19 is. I think it'd be sitting roughly where number 31 or 32 are. Now, again, these numbers on Bob's map are from the 40s, most likely. It's who was there in the 40s and all that. We're looking at the 1870s here. So it's a lot earlier. Yes?
This is looking from south towards north?
North to south.
North to south.
Yeah. We're on that hill at the north end of town looking south. A lot of pictures have been taken from that hill over here.
So if you were looking, if you were on the modern day Orlando Road, you'd be kind of looking down into the lower lower elevations, more or less?
Well, you know where this, after you pass the cemetery, heading towards Wofford Heights, you come up the hill,
Mhm.
and there's a road there that, I forget what it's called, Cemetery Road or something. Anyway, it takes you down to this spot, basically,
Okay.
and then you would be looking south.
And then which one of the buildings has the foundation you can see?
That's the school, and you'll see that, and there's a lot of footage of that, and that's over in this area, too. Wofford Heights is off to the right here, and if you walk up this hill, going this way, you would come to the road. That's where the road sits up there. So anyway, here's the model version of the Star House and those miscellaneous buildings. And we'll just do a little move here. Now, here's the opposite angle of the brewery building. Now we're looking northeast. Here's the Kernville Hotel on the left. And here's Peterson Hall, which later became the Oddfellows Hall. And there's the Star House. The previous shot was from up here. Now, this is another angle of the Kernville Hotel. This was Myrna Milky's picture from her, that she has that picture. It's just beautiful. And here's another angle of, this is the classic picture of the Kernville Hotel. There's the Peterson Hall, and Peterson's home was right next between the hotel and the hall. And again, Peterson Hall later becomes the Oddfellows Hall. And this building right here later becomes, after this picture, and we don't know exactly when, becomes the Oddfellows Hall. The first Oddfellows Hall, and it's in Bob's book, and it's in position 15, I think. That's where, no, I'm sorry, it's 16. No, come on. 14. It's 19, okay, yeah, 19.
That's the second one.
That's the second.
19, I see, yeah, 19, it's the first Oddfellows Hall, right there in the middle of Main Street. So here's A. Brown store, here's the Kernville Hotel, so just by deduction, and you look at where buildings sat, and on Bob's map, that puts this building right there where he says it's the Oddfellows Hall. We later found a picture of this, you'll see it later, but we found a picture, one photograph of this building, and it's clear that it has been converted from a single-story building to a two-story building, and you can tell, you'll see it when I show it to you, by the paint on the front. And it has IOOF sign on it. So that was the first Oddfellows Hall. They later, at some time, moved into this building, and we think it was after a fire, and this confusion about when some of those things happened. We tried to get Oddfellows records to pin some of this stuff down, but we can't. But at some point they occupied this building, and then they moved it, and that's where everyone remembers the Oddfellows Hall at the north end of Kernville. The reason they moved it was when they built the last schoolhouse, it sits right here. And so they sold that property, we got the deed in 1938, picked it up, moved it to the north end of town, and the school got built there. But again, this is around 1880.
Chuck, you colorized that picture, right?
Yeah, this one's been colorized, yeah.
I'm admiring your trees so much.
The what?
Your trees.
Oh, the trees, aren't they cool?
Admiring it.
Yeah, oh, I know, I just love that. So here's a reverse angle again. We've got Peterson Hall, the Kernville Hotel. We're not sure what this building was, but it shows up in the pictures. And now this is, on the map, this would be at the corner of Smith and Main Street. It'd be right about where that first number is right on the corner, number 40. And this building, as it turns out, there's one photograph of it, and it was a post office. And it burned down in 1903, as did all the houses next to it. And I have the sign, says post office in the model, for some reason it's not showing up here, but it matches this photo right here. There's the photograph.
Wow.
And it was a post office, and, you know, it appears to, I'm not sure if it was the first post office, but by the time it burned down, the post office was probably over at Andy Brown and the one on Nellie Dent, because that's 1906. So it was a post office at some point. It may not have been the post office when it actually burned, but in Beneath the Lake, she describes the fire started at the old post office and burned up to, you know, north. So here's a reverse angle of that. Now we're looking north. We're on Main Street, and we're moving south. And so that building, this building, this building, this building, and this one all burned down in a fire in 1903. Now this was Ma Baker or something, I forget the name. It was a boarding house. This is Judge Sumner's house. He had a ranch across the river north of town, but at some point he moved into town. I think it was around, I forget the date right now, we have it, but they built this house, so he lived in Kernville at that point. And this house, that fire burned all these buildings right up to here. They saved the judge's house, according to his granddaughter in Beneath the Lake. Managed to save the judge's house. And there's the one next door to it. You can see it burned down. And this is interesting now. This becomes, here. This is another discovery. How we make these discoveries is just fascinating. So this is College Street. And this is Main Street, and that's north. So here's Peterson Hall. Now there is a photograph, which you'll see in a minute, which shows these buildings. And I will wait till you see it. The only photograph we have of it, again, it's one of those things in the background. There it is right there, and if you look closely, you can see the facade and all of that, and here's Peterson Hall. And this is Mrs. Belknap, and she's standing in the front yard of Judge Sumner's home. And if you look, once you orient the stuff, okay, if she was standing in that northwest corner of the front yard, the camera's looking north, that would be College Street. That would have to be Peterson Hall. College Street would be right there next to it. And so this building was the one you saw in the previous shot. So let me pull back here. And so there she is. And here's Ma Baker's house, the one that burned. Hooper. And so that's Mrs. Belknap. So anyway, this would be the only picture we have of that building. It turns out on the corner, according to, I believe it's in Beneath the Lake, on the corner of College and Main, that's where that is, there was a drugstore. What's the guy's name? It's in here somewhere. Van Voorhees, Dr. Van Voorhees had a drugstore, and you know, so who knew? So and that's got to be it. It just has to be. So again, here's the old post office building, the buildings that burned, the house that burned. Here's the judge's house. So she was standing, that previous shot, she was standing right here, and the camera was looking this way. And that's where the drugstore was, right over there. Now we're pulling back to the front yard of, we're looking northeast along Main Street. We're pulling back to the front yard of the Andy Brown home, which is right next door to the store. So this is their front yard, that's their walkway. And here's the first Andy Brown house. This house, when they bought, he and his brother bought the property where the store is. That house was there. And 3 or 4 years later, he married Alice Sumner, the judge's daughter. This was where they lived, in this little cottage. Now, we're going out of sequence time-wise here because I wanted to compare them. So this cottage, again, was there when he bought the property. This is the photo of it. And that became their home. And then, here's another angle on it. Now this is where it gets fun. In sometime, I forget what the date was, in the 18, when did he remodel it the first time? It's in there.
1880, the early 1880s.
Early 1880s, they remodeled it, and that became the house. Now, you can see, all they did was add a second story behind it. This is the little cottage is still there. And so they had more bedrooms. They had 2 kids by then, and they needed more room, so they added on to the house.
And also a bathtub.
Oh, and it had a bathtub and a real bathroom. And so that became the house. Then, so that was the 1880s? Yeah. So that's what they did. Now, here's the fun part. This is in 1898. Now you can see here's the original cottage. Here's the roof of that second story section. But all of this was added in the 1898 because Mrs. Brown wanted a house more like her friends in Los Angeles. And yeah, and so an upstairs was added to the front of the house as well as a new bathroom with all the modern amenities. In addition, they had a gas lighting system using acetylene gas, which they made on the premises. And at some point, they named the newly remodeled home. We've got this on a picture, 2 or 3 pictures of this house taken later. They called it Ross Trevor on Kern. And Ross Trevor is a town in Ireland. That's where Andy's from. So he obviously named it after a town that he probably liked in Ireland.
Wow.
They had a widow's walk up there or something.
Yes, they did. And there's text talking about how Bessie used to go up there, his daughter, and look at things. And this, by the way, this is one of the unfinished. We did the model that we created. The most complete version is the 1948 version. A lot of these are from, we did it by decades because the town changed. So there's a version for the 1860s, a version for the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s. Each model is, has different buildings in it and stuff. And this one, that's why there's no trees, there's nothing, no extras. This is, we still have a lot of work to do. Now this is on Main Street, looking northwest. There's the first Andy Brown cottage. So this would be in the late 1860s. This property, this is where the A. Brown store ended up. And we're standing on the east side of Main Street looking across. And here's Nellie Dent going off this way. And the reception saloon would be across the street on the right. So this was, when they bought the property, this is what was here. Turns out the deeds showed, and this is in Beneath the Lake, that this building and this property had originally been owned by Adam Hamilton. Adam Hamilton is the guy who sold whiskey and created Whiskey Flat. So according to Elizabeth Brady, Andy Brown's granddaughter, she said it's believed that this would be where he sold his liquor the first time. So, although Tammy thinks it's across the street where the reception saloon ended up because there's 2 big trees there. Why would you?
Because if I was banished down by the river with my whiskey, I would go beneath the 2 biggest trees. I have no proof of that. That's what I would.
Can you keep this in sync with that a little bit? So anyway, Andy and his brother bought this. They owned, at some point, they owned the reception saloon. It wasn't called the reception, we don't think. It was the Brown Brothers Saloon and Billiards or something like that. But they owned that for a short while. Then they bought this property and they moved out of that. And so this is what they ended up with. Now you'll see some morphs here. So again, this was like a store by the time they bought it. So they started, it was a merchandise store. And they, let me take a moment here. Come on. There we go. Now, there's the first, there's that wooden store right there. Next to it is the first iteration of the A. Brown store. It's not, it ends right here. It's only like 3 windows, or 2 windows with a door in the middle. It's not that big. This was the wooden store, the original one, and they started using this as a warehouse for the store. So that was, this is around 1880 when this occurred. They built that. So the next thing that happened is,
Well, that was one of
well, there's, yeah, this is another version from the model of that, the original store and the warehouse next to it. And that picture with the stagecoach in front and all of that, that's what it looked like. Then, around somewhere in the late 70s or a year, yeah, around 77, yeah. He added a second story onto the brick store. Again, you can see there, it's not that big. There's a window, door, and a window. Second story, and here's that warehouse next to it, still there. There's a little space between them. So he did that, and about a year later, we think.
Do you have a way more for this?
Yeah, right, there it is in the model. And a short time later, a year or so, according to what we figure out, they took the wooden upper story off. He almost tripled the width of the building, and of course he destroyed the warehouse next to it, tore that down. And this is the Andy Brown store that we all know and love.
That's what you're.
Yeah, right, okay, yeah. So it's amazing how dynamic it was. I mean, they were constantly changing things. And here's the version of it from the 1940s. This is what people that are still alive today can remember being in the A. Brown store. We've interviewed them, people like Barbara Hinkie, not Barbara, Marianne Cole. Oh, now this is Cook's Feed Stable. We're on Main Street. Forsyth's Feed Stable. We're now on Main Street, looking east, and we're moving to the left, which is north. And so this is what it looked like in the late 1870s, late 60s, early 70s. Kern River Hotel. There's pictures of this, and very detailed, and we know. But at some point, this was also, this building and the ones coming up, some or all of them were called the Olympic Hotel, and the Kern River Hotel, and then what's the other one? And it turns out, we just found out that Andy Brown bought this property. Now, he died in 06, 09. So he bought this and converted some or all of these buildings that you've just seen into the Mountain Inn, except it wasn't the Mountain Inn we all know about, it was these buildings. He called it the Mountain Inn. And it burned down a couple of years later, the whole thing. Early
1915.
Yeah, 1915, the whole thing burned down after he had acquired it and named it the Mountain Inn. So then they built the Mountain Inn that we all know and love. Now, here we are on the east side of Main Street. Again, north is to the right. And this is what was across the street from everything that you just saw. These buildings are on the west side of Main Street. There's the A. Brown store up there, and there's Nellie Dent. So there was this saloon. I don't know what this building was. This was variously called Grady's store, Christian's store, and around 1919, Jim Bechtel bought it and turned it into Bechtel's store. Now here's, we're jumping across the river. We're looking towards Kernville. That's the west. That's the footbridge. That's the first bridge that they had. Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Now, this is, okay, now we're on Nellie Dent Street. Here's Main Street right here. This is Nellie Dent. And we're looking northeast. Here's the reception saloon. Now you're going to see a series of businesses that appeared on that corner. What went on again? Very dynamic.
Remember this disappeared?
Yeah. Now again, there's the blacksmith shop right to the left of it. And sometime around the time that the fire occurred, which took out all the buildings, this disappears too. So we think perhaps the saloon burnt down when the Mountain Inn burned down, the first Mountain Inn. And all those, or Olympic Hotel, or whatever it was called at the time, or Kern River Hotel. It had various names. So those disappeared right around 1913 or 14. And so does this. There are no pictures of this. There is a picture, which you'll see in a moment, of this intersection. It's a classic panoramic shot, and there's nothing there. And that was, the date on that is like somewhere between 1916 and 1919. Here it is. And so the saloon is gone. There's nothing there. That's the first house of Doc Smith. That house burned down and was replaced with another one, which the Wofford family bought, and it's still in Wofford Heights, what was known as Doc Smith's house. But actually, I talked to the Woffords and found out that the house they have is not this house. But we have pictures of this, so it changes. Pictures of this intersection. There's another house there and later versions of it. But anyway, so here's Nellie Dent right here, and here's Main Street. There's the A. Brown store. There's the Mountain Inn. This has to be somewhere dated by the cars and by the fact that there's some pretty big trees now around the Mountain Inn. When it was first built, we had pictures, there were no trees. So those trees are at least 3, 4, or 5 years old. If it was built in 1915, this is pushing 1920, most likely. And the saloon is gone. So now, here is somewhere in the early 20s, this business appears there, Connor's Service Station. There's the 2 trees, still there. And so that was there. It was like a little one-stop. And here's our model version of it. Again, it's not detailed yet. This is one of the versions that we haven't finished. Then it got remodeled and enlarged slightly, and it became the Midway lunchroom. And here's a Model A right here, so we know it's at least around 1926, 27. So this is mid-20s. And then here's our model version of it again. It needs a lot more detail, but. And then around 1930, it becomes O'Brien's, and they enlarge it again. And it's like a one-stop, like what we call a one-stop today. And if you were coming into Kernville from across the bridge, and you drive up Nellie Dent and you hit the corner, and boom, there it is. Or if you're coming in from the south, you come up Main Street, go past the Mountain Inn, and boom, there's your store. And that's a barber pole. So this little wing was added on to the building, and so that was the barber shop. We don't know who the barber that everyone remembers. His shop was in the dance hall, and you'll see pictures of that. He was related to the Hinkies and Barbara Hinkie and Rex. Yeah. So there's O'Brien's. And we have a model version of it coming up here. There we go. Again, needs a lot more detail, but We'll get there. And then here's the final version. Now this is Don's Cafe. This is what everyone remembers. Don's Cafe and Les is Inn, same corner. There's the tree on the left. The tree on the right is gone by this time. But there it is. And this had to be somewhere in the late 30s, we think, somewhere around 1940 is when that appeared. Here it is in the model. And that, again, is the corner of Nellyden and Main. So that had 4 different businesses and a period of time as an empty lot. I mean, it's just interesting. And there's the second version of Doc Smith's house. This is the one that got moved to Wofford Heights. And when you compare them, you can see this is a whole different building than the other one that we showed you.
And you're going to show a different angle of Long Street.
Yeah, right, yeah. Now this is, again, north end of town, on the hill, looking to the south. That would be the lake and Cook's Peak and all that back there. This is Peterson Hall. Now, it used to, see that seam right there? That used to be the back end of the building. It used to have 4 windows up and down. We think the Oddfellows must have done this, because by this time, this is the new school, the second school, so it's at least 1898 this was built, and so was the church. There's the Methodist church. So they were built in 98. So this is, and then the trees are pretty large. There were no trees when this was built. So 1898, this is probably early 1900s, 1910, somewhere in there. And somehow this building has been extended, and we think the Oddfellows owned it by then. However, this is the building that was 1 story high that I showed you that used to be the Oddfellows Hall. And we have a picture of the front of it when it's 2 stories, and it says IOOF on the front. So at some point they moved from this building to this building. That may have already been done at this time, we're not sure. And here's a lumber yard, Annie Brown's lumber yard, which disappeared a few years later, probably because of Johnsondale, or maybe, we're guessing, I don't know. So anyway, you'll see a match from the model of this. And there we go, there's the match. And also you can see Movie Street is there by this time. And here's again, the second schoolhouse. It's a great little building, just a classic little 1-room schoolhouse. And here's the front of it, and you can see the Methodist church behind it. This is a match from a picture we'll see in a minute. There you can see the church. Okay, now here's Movie Street, moving in on the church and Movie Street. And Movie Street was on the west edge of town, right up against the hill. This is from a Hopalong Cassidy picture, that angle. And you can see Andy Brown's house at the extreme south end of Movie Street. So that was the real house. All of these were fake buildings, and most of the ones on the right were fake. Now this is Gabe Chavez' house, and it sits on the property where Judge Sumner's house was. So by this time, which is early 1900s, we think, Sumner's house disappeared, and a man named Gabe Chavez had a house there. And right across the street from it, this is that Oddfellows Hall. And we have a photograph of it, which I didn't have time to put in last night, but right there it says IOOF. And we have a photo of this exact angle of the building. And so you can see, as I said earlier, it went from being a single story to a 2-story. This is where the facade ended when it was a 1-story building. And you can see they added on, and in the photos it's clear this is painted white, this is painted white, but the addition, they didn't bother to paint it. It made it real clear that that's what happened. And here it is again from a different angle. Again, you can see Movie Street over there behind all of that. And here's the lumber yard. And the A. Brown store over here. And Andy's house. And again, this is somewhere before 1938 because the school is there. Okay, now this is north and we're zooming in on the, this is Nellie Dent Street right here. And we're coming down, we're going to see the jail and all of that stuff. This is right by the river. This is a county yard. They had some maintenance buildings there as well as the jail. And that truck, that's in a photo. I mean, I don't put stuff there randomly. Stuff, if it's in here, it's in a photo somewhere. So somebody worked on the truck there. They had a little ramp they drive up so they could get under.
It looks exactly like the old jail in Isabella.
Pardon?
It looks exactly like the old jail in Isabella.
Well, this is the original jail. Now this jail, this building is in Silver City.
Okay,
We've
yeah,
verified
it's
that.
building.
Faith Morrison, whose father was Hank, who was the county maintenance guy, this is where she lived. She lived right across from this. You'll see it in a minute. And she said this jail, she used to use, it was moved up here to New Kernville when they moved, and she used to use it as a tack room. She was a horsewoman and she was a good one, and this was where she kept her saddles and stuff. And she said they moved this to Pioneer Village. Well, I checked, and Pioneer Village doesn't have any jail from Kernville. And then I looked at pictures of it and compared them to what's at Silver City. And it's in Silver City.
Yeah,
It's
the
a
one
jail.
that's by the senior center.
Yeah,
We used it for storage.
right.
Go through the bars.
Yeah, the Isabella jail, I don't have pictures of, I don't think. So now, looking across the river, there's the beach and the swimming beach where everybody swam and all that. And here's the house where Hank lived and Faith Seeley Morrison, Faith Morrison. She'll be here for the reunion coming up. And now this is a tour of, this is Haight Street, or Height Street, I'm sorry. Yeah, so we're heading west on Height Street now towards Main Street. And a lot of these houses are owned by names you would recognize, but I didn't have time to really get into detail on that. We will eventually, so each house will be identified, who owned it, and so on. But and again, you can see the ditch. The ditch ran on Main Street, and then it turned and comes up Height Street and goes right out to the river.
Was that ditch bringing in fresh water?
Yeah, that's river water. The intake was somewhere up near the Big Blue Mill, north of town. And there were two ditches, actually. There's another ditch up on the hill, that hill behind these houses that was up higher. I'll show you that in a minute. And here we are at Main Street again. And now we're going to do a move north on Main Street from the Mountain Inn all the way up to the end of Main Street. I'm just going to let these play now, and we can move along. You can see Longstreet's liquor store, that little Quonset hut on Nellie Dent, that got moved to New Kernville. And that's where the Something Sweet is now, right on the corner of Soretta. And it was, that building, exact building was moved up here and was a liquor store as late as the late 50s. When I came here, it was there. So this is, again, along Main Street on the east side of Main. We're moving north. And one of the things about this model is it's not, I can't make things as funky as they really were. You know, this looks like, oh my God, those are beautiful houses. Wow.
Yeah, too clean.
They were a little more funky, but you know, I don't have the time or the, you know, the tools to make it that real.
Chuck, what was the population?
Some people have said in interviews, like Helen Witt, she said she thought around 500 at this time, at the end. That greenhouse on the right, that's where Barbara Hinkey lived. Summers, when she came up here, she wrote River Children, and her relatives lived there, and that's where she would stay. Those houses right there on the right, those were James rentals. He was quite a property owner. You'll see some more of his properties. He was an entrepreneur. That brown house, that's the Pasco house. It's, and the green roof house coming up, that's Jim Bechtel's house. Jim Bechtel was a big-time mover and shaker. He's the one who built the post office building and the water tower behind it. And so he had a tower with a water tank so people could have pressurized water in the south end of town. And he did the same thing here. See the tower behind his house? He built another one. So he was selling pressurized water to people on both ends of town. He was really a smart guy, a businessman. A lot of these were just rental properties. Now we're up almost at the where Main Street merges with Sumner. Here's Sumner Street, right, comes in right there. So, and this is called Hackley Hill, and this is where the foundations are still to this day. And there's a little bit of a tower there, concrete tower. That was a water tower that is up here on the hill.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're going to come up to Murray Knight's property. And Murray Knight was the fire chief in Old Kernville. And the fire department is right over here next to his house, convenient. And but he had a nice little farm here. He called it Murray's Ranch. I'm in touch with his granddaughter, and she's provided a lot of information. But these, all these signs and wagon wheels and details like that, those are in the pictures. And these are exactly, and Murray was the fire chief here in New Kernville. He's the reason we have a fire department where it is. He and his wife Zora are responsible for what we have in New Kernville, the layout of the town. He headed up the Kernville Development Company, which bought New Kernville from the Burlandos, bought the property, and designed the town as it is. So they very intentionally laid this little town out the way it is. And I think we owe them a gratitude, debt of gratitude. They did a fantastic job. So he had, this is his property, the back of his property, and these are called Murray Knight's cabins. There were 4 of them. These were rental cabins that he had. Now, all 4 of those moved here to New Kernville. They make up the first V-shaped wing of the Kernville Inn. If you stand on the lawn and look at that building, it's a V-shape like this. So he put a cabin here, a space, a cabin, a space, a cabin, a space, and a cabin. 4 cabins with an equal size space in between. So they just framed up in between the cabins. They only had to build half the building. And that's what you see when you look at it now. And we have photographs that show that being done. And we have photographs of the cabins actually being trucked up the road to New Kernville. These people were so entrepreneurial, it just, yeah.
They didn't waste anything.
Now there's the fire department, and we have, it's pretty accurate from photos that we've been able to find. We did a bunch of research and got some pictures. There aren't really any in the Powers collection, but we found some. Here's where the ditch ran. It ran, the intake for the ditch is to the left, up river. So this is the beginning of the ditch in the north end of town. And this is Murray's backyard. That barn was his, and a big meadow and a field. They had a lot of horses there. And they stored trailers there. I mean, that's a trailer, that's a real trailer that was really there. Now here is an aerial version of the same shot. Here's the fire department. Here's the Barree night cabins. There's that trailer that we were just looking at, and there's the barn. He had all this big field here. And there's an outhouse, by the way. And, so anyway, now we're going to tour Main Street. Going north, going south, we're going to look at the west side of Main Street. This is something interesting. That's a store called Billis Store. Mr. Billis owned it, and it's described in Beneath the Lake. He used to buy candy there. You know, who knew? And right at the north end of town, at the base of Hackney Hill. And there's the Star House, and here's the Oddfellows Hall after they moved it. This is at the north end of town now, and you can see the foundations of it still today. And here's a peek at the outdoor theater. This was a projection booth. We have a lot of detail on that. You can go in and look at the projectors and everything. Here's the screen and a bunch of bench seats. So in the summertime, they would show the movies outside, and in the wintertime, they showed them inside. Well, now we're looking, this house was owned by someone named McDonald, and there's a McDonald family here, but it wasn't them. I checked with them. This was where Marge Powers, she was Marge Martin then, lived, right here. And she used to talk about going out in her front yard or backyard up on the hill and watch the movies for free. And then here's Roy Orrick was a mover and shaker. He was part of Kernville Development Company. This is his house, and he was a trucker. He had a moving company. And the steps and all the foundations of this house are still visible. There's a big slab here that you can still see, and you can see some of these foundations. And then, of course, you see the school. So the school foundations are still there, the third school. So when you look down there now, you're seeing these foundations from up here. You're looking down this way. And right on this side, there's a slab. It's sometimes covered with silt. It's hard to discern, but if you look closely, you can tell it's there. That was for this. And you can still see all that. Yeah, that was a nice building, built in 1938. And again, this is where the Oddfellows Hall, this is where Peterson Hall was, right here. So the Oddfellows, we had the deed, they sold this property to the school district, picked the building up and moved it to where you just saw it. And they built the school. And after Andy Brown's lumber company disappeared, these buildings appeared. These are just some kind of storage buildings that were his. And here's College Street. Now we're heading west up to the hill. This is probably an administration building for the school. It's visible in several pictures. Here's some additional classrooms that were outside in the back in the playground. And this bus, I kind of improvised that one. It didn't look quite like that. This is it had a hood thing out front, the real one, but I couldn't find a model that worked. There's the Methodist Church. But there's a photo with the bus parked right here, so I put that there, even though it's not an exact match. Now we're in front of the school again, continuing south, looking at the west side of Main Street. That's College right there, so we're moving north from College. This property was owned by a couple of guys, two different owners. One was Olson and
Phillips and Olson.
and somebody named Phillips, and this became the doctor's office, I believe. And I'm not 100% sure about these buildings. It's pretty accurate, but anyhow, that was the doctor's office. And parts of that, those buildings are here, right over here on Big Blue, I think it is. What's her name?
Peterson,
Yeah,
I forgot her first name.
yeah, owns it. Anyway,
Can I ask about the Phillips?
Pardon?
Do you have a first name for the Phillips?
No.
no,
I just know there's some tribal people that had Phillips as the last name.
okay, could be. Here we are now. This is Andy Brown's property, his mansion after they were built. And that house next to it was Sumner Brown, his son. They built a house there. And here's the store.
Chuck, do you have any pictures of the interior of the A. Brown store?
No, the only one I've ever seen that I think is accurate, it was at the Wells Fargo branch office down here in Isabella, and it disappeared a long time ago. But I don't know, do you know of any?
No.
Yeah, right. And it's fun, in the model, we can go into these buildings and look out through the windows and see what it looks like all around. We didn't create the interiors, but you can go in.
No,
It's
God
an
help us
empty.
if he decides to put furniture in all these buildings.
You'll never, you
So,
For years.
here's Nellie Dent, that's the west end of it up there. That's Archie South's house, the cabin. Here's the first Mountain Inn cabin, and then here's the more modern Mountain Inn cabins. Again, on this side, they built 3 of them. And each one had, I think, 2 rooms, 2 suites in it. Now this is Milton and Longstreet's place, and I always love this. It's a gas station, and look at the sign on top there, cocktails. Pull right in and have a drink. Outside is change. And this is the second Kernville garage, and this is fascinating to me. This was the first garage, which we have in older models, burned down in 1948, and they built this garage. This is a substantial, there's 2 buildings, 1948.
Oh, no.
Wow. I mean, people have told me nobody believed it was gonna happen. They went, it ain't gonna happen, folks. So they just went on ahead and lived life, you know. Garage burned down, hell, build a new one, you know. This was a rental house that Andy Brown owned. And then here's the Tilly house again, which again, Tibbetts, which we think originally was the Mrs. Cummings hotel. And then there's one more here. Yeah, well, actually, no, this is, what's his name? The Mountain Man, yeah.
J.T. Howe.
Yeah, Hal. He was a mountain man, a packer, a lion hunter. We've got pictures of him with, you know, skins, walls of skins. He was quite the hunter. And there's good pictures of this house, this property that we modeled from. Now here we are on Nellie Dent Street at the extreme west end. Behind and to the left would be the Mountain Inn, or I'm sorry, A. Brown store. And so here's Archie Stout's cabin again. He was a cameraman who filmed movies up here. And retired here. Here's the Mountain Inn cabins, which are now the Riverview Lodge. And here's the newer ones. There's 3 there next to each other. And then here's the main part of the Mountain Inn. And on the south end of the Mountain Inn, there's 2 more of these green cabins that they built. So they had 5 of those. And now we're crossing Main Street, heading east on Nellie Dent. And here's Bechtol's Hall, the dance hall. And this was where the main barber shop was, the one that the Hinkies related to. Its name was Hinky. And there was a couple of different cafes and little shops here over the years. And again, Beckel built that, and he built this building, which became the post office, but it was originally a restaurant, oddly enough. That's Italian. So it started as a restaurant, and it ended up as a restaurant. And there's his water tower, and so he was a water company for the north and south end of town, too. And then here's Bert's store. Bert James bought this from Jim Beckel. It was originally Jim's store. We've got great pictures of it. And he sold it to Bert James in 1929. 1929, hello? Stock market crash, depression. But Bert did okay, as you'll see.
People need stuff.
Yeah. And this is Mrs. Potter, is it? Yeah. Ruth Potter. This was a little motel with 3 units in it, a nice little parking space for the cars. We've got some details. This is what was called Campbell's Block. The Campbell family, they had the phone company originally, and he built this. And Helen Witt is the Campbell daughter. She had a little sweet shop, little ice cream and sodas and stuff that she had in the building here, that she said, told her dad, if you build it, you got to give me a sweet shop. And this is Beckel Court. This is a big chunk of land. Beckel built and moved little cabins and houses onto the property. They were 10 or 15. Again, Beckel Hall, the post office, the store, the water company, the house and the property and the water company at the other end of town, and Beckel Court. This guy was a mover and a shaker.
He was Steve Spradlin of his day.
Yeah, right. And here's the original phone company, the Campbells were there, and then later the Goldens. This is an Andy Brown rental. This is Longstreet's new liquor store, which appeared somewhere in the mid to late 40s and was only there probably 3 or 4 years. And then they picked it up and moved it. This is exactly how it looked, sitting on the corner of Soretta and Kernville Road right over here. And it's now the...
I have to point out, he did go through the trouble to put things in the interior of the liquor store.
Yeah, I overdid it. Yeah, I did. And there's the A. Brown store, of course, on Main Street. Now here we are, again, we're on Main Street, looking north. Here's College Street. This is the 3rd school. And we're going to tour Smith Street, which is to the right. These houses, this one right here and this one, were owned by Bert James Reynolds. And you notice those barrels, that's everybody had fuel oil for the heaters. That's how you heated a house in those days. And that's what the Standard dealership was all about, that big building next to the school. That's where they sold the fuel oil that everybody used to heat. And we're heading towards the river. Again, this is Smith Street. Smith, did I say? Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, we have, the names of the owners of all these properties. So I don't remember all of them, and these are not names that I knew anyway. And again, it's the late 40s, so a lot of the old timers that we know about and revere had moved on by then. And these properties were owned by newcomers, flatlanders.
Yes.
Some of them, but there were still plenty of old timers here. Now we're heading back towards Main Street. And there's another thing, we don't know quite when this model, this is taken from the 1948 to the end version of the model, which is the most detailed. This was Jawkin property, I do know that. according to the map here, and I haven't been able to verify which Jockman, but somebody named Jockman lived there.
Vance?
Well, Vance's, yeah, there's a Vance house, I think that was it, or it's one of these coming up. But I talked to the Vances and to Ron and Bill, and neither of them seem to know about this, so it might not have been their relative. And here's, that house is the orange one, owned by Christensen, or the tan one. That green house next to it, that's where Barbara Hinkey relatives lived, and that's where she stayed when she came to Kernville in the summers. And again, it ends up on the two houses that were owned by Bert James, two rental houses. And now we're again at the south end of town, looking north along Main Street. There's the Mountain Inn right there. And we're going to go along Green Street here. Those are the two additional Mountain Inn cabins that we're talking about. See the water tank up on top of the Mountain Inn there? That flickering, that's a glitch I have to fix in the model. These were rentals. I don't know who owned these. There's the back end of the post office with the water tower. Yeah. And a couple of Bert James relatives lived along here in one or two of these houses, brothers or uncles, I can't remember. Here's the back of his store. And this little pathway right here, leads right up to the store. And I read somewhere about how Bert used to walk to work. Well, you'll see in a minute, his house where he lived was right over on the other side of the street. So he just cross the street and walk up that little lane and go in the back of his store, and he was at work. I think for some people anyway, it was a pretty idyllic way of life. Now you can see we're coming to the edge of the river. You can see the bridge. This again is Green Street, and Green Street ends where the weir is. You'll see the weir in a minute. And the weir, all of this concrete, massive structure is still there. We went to it a couple of years ago on a little tour. It's buried deep in the trees and bushes, but it's there. This was a building owned by the Kern County School District. I'm not sure who lived there or what the deal was. And now that house on the right, that's Bert James' home. And that was moved up here to New Kernville. It's the house he lived in up on the hill near the store. And we have a lot of photographs of it being moved. And I wanted to do some matching shots that where it just stopped. And right here we have a matching photo of this, but I ran out of time last night. But that house, so that was his home. And again, he'd just go out the front yard and cross the street and go up that little lane, and he was at work. And he rented this to, I think, one of his brothers or somebody related to him. And we're not done with Bert here. He was quite a mover and shaker too. Here is another rental house of his. This is a beautiful little home. We have lots of detail in it, and there's a garage for it. And a picture of this garage and this building, which we came across. I looked, I was going to do a matching shot here again, but I ran out of time. But the photo is right from this angle. And I'm looking closely and I see it says Kernville Laundry there. Yeah, and then I look on the map, on the Corps of Engineers thing, and that lot was owned by the Marks family. Well, Billy Marks, the Marks family were prominent in Old Kernville and New Kernville, and I checked with Billy, their son, he's a friend of mine, a couple years younger. He said, yeah, they had a laundry right there. Old Kernville, so who knew? You know, again, a discovery by looking at photos and seeing details that you don't normally pay attention to, you know. But, yeah, the Marks, they had a big gravel yard right over there where Frandy Park is. Frandy Park used to be the Marks gravel yard back in the early days of New Kernville. Now we're at the north end of town, looking south, coming down Ackley Hill, and we're going to go up Sumner Street. There's the school over there. There's the Altelis Hall. Here's the Ackley House. Here's the Murray Knight's Cabins. Fire department's over to the left. There's the entrance to the fire department, this road right here.
Pretty steep drop.
Yeah. We're coming up on a Christian Science Church, which was moved, it still exists, it's in Wofford Heights. It was picked up and moved, and we have photos of the move, and they just picked the whole building up, moved it just like you see it. Now we're at the end of Sumner Street where it intersects Smith Street. And now we're looking at houses on the west side of Sumner Street. And a lot of them, especially along where that green car is, that's actually the backyard of houses that fronted on Main Street. Those pieces of property were long, but a lot of people had rental houses on the backside. And but this is the backyard of one of the houses. Yeah. It's funny, for a lot of the signs that we did at the gas stations and stuff like that, you can find that stuff on the internet. I mean, I see a sign and then I go search Richfield signs, and you look into every one, and you know, like all this stuff up here. I mean, you find that on the internet. People collect that stuff.
But there are things like this that you put painstaking effort into recreating some of the more personal items.
So this, I think this is the last shot. We're right at the end here.
Yes,
Again, there's Longstreet's liquor store, the phone company, Ellie Den, Bird store, Jekyll Hall. They end up on the mountain inn. So this is circa 1948 in Old Kernville. So that's it. Now, one thing we can do, if you want to, if anybody has any questions or interest, we can explore the actual model. I mean, if anybody's got a question, want to see a building up close or something.
What is that on the east side of the river there?
Okay, these were properties that are indicated in this Corps of Engineers stuff, and I had to look up the names, but there were several homes there. Actually, the Campbells had a home. One of these was the Campbells. They owned Campbell's Block right here, and the phone company. This is Holloway's Cabins. There's pictures of it. They're good pictures of it. A bunch of rustic cabins. I don't know what these buildings are, but we see them in an aerial photograph. And there's some signs along the road here. There was another store right here. It shows up in some pictures. But this isn't as, except for Holloway's Cabins and a couple of the signs that we have along here, a lot of this is just improvised. I know there was something there where, you know, the exact style and shape of a house is just kind of made up, but the roads and all that, they show up on aerials and stuff like that. Here's Holloway's Cabins, and that store probably was there because the cabins were there. You know, they probably did a good business. It's kind of herky-jerky when you try to navigate this way.
I know Chuck over on the east side, later on, it was before they gave up on the town, there was a high school and they put some buildings.
Oh, yes.
It's further out than.
That's right, you're right. Further along this road, this is called Mile Road. And the high school was
Way out there.
up here somewhere,
Yeah,
right up in this area, somewhere close to where Tanny's Landing is
That's
probably.
right, yeah.
Down in the flat part there. And the bridge, this bridge wasn't built until 1920. We've got newspaper clippings, somewhere between 1918 and 1920. And we're not sure when they paved the roads. A lot of the pictures, even after the 20s, appear to be dirt. It's hard to say, hard pack, but when it actually, and we've contacted the county, but so far no success in trying to find out when they actually paved the roads. But the bridge wasn't built until right around 1920, and there's some newspaper articles talking about how people really wanted a bridge so they could get because they had to go all the way down to Isabella and out to the South Fork and across the South Fork. There was a bridge there, and you know, if they wanted to get upriver, that's how they did it. So anyway, anybody got anything they want to see in particular up close?
So Chuck, in the bigger view, you have the weir. Is that the beginning of the Barree Canal?
Yes,
The Barree
yes,
Powerhouse?
Here's the weirs. And so what they did, the main fork of the river is on the left. And when they built the weir, this was really kind of a channel. This was a low dam. It backed the water up so it would divert it through the weir if the gates were open. And this leads to the opening, the beginning of the Barree Canal, which is right around where the Tilly Creek is in Walford Heights, where it comes down to the river. That's the actual beginnings of the canal. So this stretch here was just a big settling pond. So the silt would settle out and they'd have really clean water when they went there. But yeah, that's, you know, again, this is where we went there a couple of years ago, and these gates are all still there, and much of this concrete, like the weir, still there.
So Chuck, A. Brown's store was brick,
Yep.
and I noticed one or two other buildings that you had shown brick in the model. Were there other?
Yeah, where I showed brick, it's brick in the photos. Like this house right here is one of them, at the end of Green Street.
And you have
And I think somebody named Trumbull owned this house. come to think of it. And it's clearly brick and a nice brick wall in the front.
And you have a sense of roughly how many houses in Old Kernville might have been brick?
I don't think many were.
So just 3 or 4?
I think, yeah, I think it was just, just a small handful. Yeah.
Chuck, I know it's still an ongoing project, but I loved it when you interspersed the actual photograph.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
So plan on doing more of that, or you?
Well, we will, and I would have done a lot more for this presentation, but we just ran out of time.
It's fine.
At midnight.
I got up for it.
Yeah. Yes.
So the boarding house you showed that burned down, was it Adobe?
The boarding house, you mean the one that
Mrs. Potter?
Mrs., no, well, not Potter, it's, which one, the one?
Next to Sumner's house.
Yeah.
The one next to Sumner's house, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it showed the picture of it being burned out.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, yes, right, Mrs. Hooper, I think,
Oh, maybe it was.
Grandma
It looked like it was burned out.
Yeah, and then you did a workshop to the.
Yeah, it was burned down. So I'm sorry, what was the question?
It wasn't Adobe?
Yeah, well, yeah, it wasn't, well, no, yes, it was Adobe, the outside was. I think it was wood frame, but it was Adobe, and that's why it stood up in the fire.
Yeah, this exterior walls survived the fire.
Yeah, right. And boy, they had a lot of fires. I mean, it just, you know, there were some big ones. The one at the north end of town here that took out the Kernville Hotel, and all, that was 1891, and there was a bunch of newspaper articles that
25
found about
buildings.
it. Yeah, it said 25 buildings were burned, and they stopped the fire by blowing up this is what it says, blew up the Oddfellows Hall using grape powder to stop the fire. Now, the Oddfellows Hall, we're not sure which one they're talking about, because was it the original one, the little one that was in the middle of Main Street, that was a single story and then a 2-story, and did they blow that up? But the building appears to be there in some form or another after the date of that fire. Also, Peterson Hall, which sat next to the hotel right there at College in Maine, and later became the Oddfellows Hall, it was still intact, although we have a picture of it that's full of broken glass. Every window is broken, and there's boards hanging off of it, and that picture, it identifies it as the Oddfellows Hall. And we're thinking maybe, and then
They're in the Oddfellows records that we do have, the
Right.
guy references going in afterwards and.
yeah, they lost some regalia. The Oddfellows reported they lost some regalia in the fire. But they didn't lose the whole building, so, and there's also confusion. It was originally Peterson Hall. And in people's memories, okay, originally it was Peterson Hall, so it was always Peterson Hall, even after it became the Oddfellows. It was Peterson Hall. You know, so you get references. One newspaper article calls it Peterson Hall, another calls it the Oddfellows Hall. So, and people do the same. Elizabeth Barree in her book calls it Peterson Hall when she's clearly referring to the Oddfellows. What we know is the Oddfellows Hall, but she's calling it Peterson Hall. So that can confuse things too. But we really don't know. What we would love to find out is, when did the Oddfellows move into the building? And are they the ones that enlarged it? Because it was clearly enlarged. And then, you know, so, and we've tried, I mean, unfortunately, what was his name, Burkhart? The last Oddfellow. He passed on, and we've tried seeing if anybody has the records. And we can't find it.
We kept good records, so they're out there somewhere.
But, yeah, so that fire took out a lot. Then there was the 1903 fire, which took out the original little post office building and a whole bunch of houses, the rooming house. It's fascinating. But I love the 1868 description of coming into town, the Havila Courier. It's in her book. And it's a building by building description of the town. Let's see, Kernville, let's see, So he's talking about walking into town from here. This is 1868, Havilah Weekly Courier.
Is this what you're looking for?
Kernville boasts of 2 stores, both of which are well supplied. Goods are doing a good business. There are 2 hotels, and blah blah, and 2 saloons, and let's see.
Right.
Okay.
Is that what you're looking for, the usual?
Yeah.
We talked about?
Well, yeah, but I want to read it from here. Let's see, there are 2 saloons, and let's see, Alex Forsyth, wait, entering the town from the south, here it is. Correspondent continued, you first encounter Mrs. Cummings' Hotel. So if you're entering the town from the south, now this model is 1948, but according to Monica Lambert, who owns this, what we know as the Tibbetts home, but this part of the home isn't on their house. It sits up on Soretta Street, right across from the Methodist Church. And this front section with this transverse ridge, that's not part of the house now. It's everything behind it. It's this part, okay? And right here, this is what the front wall of the house is now. The front door's right below that ridge. This part of the building isn't there. So, if you're entering the town from the south, and you first encounter Mrs. Cummings' Hotel, capable of accommodating a number of guests. The rooms are large, well ventilated. Rather a boarding house than a hotel. Mrs. Cummings' house was on the west side of Main Street, backing up to the hill. I mean, that's describing what we have photos of and know as the Tibbetts house. But I think at one time, before Tibbetts bought it, which was much later, and Monica says that the deed says the house is built in the early 1860s.
Wow.
So it was there when this guy wrote this. So I'm sure that was Mrs. Cummings' boarding house or hotel. Just love it.
Well, you can talk about their line about the drugstore being above the usual one.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, that was
They're
the comment about a drugstore at some point when they described that drugstore, in the Havilah, in this same article. It says, and we showed what we think was it. It's at the corner of the college in Maine, and that's where he says it was. He says, David California, this David Californian article describes a drugstore at the corner of Main and College owned by Dr. Dan Voorhees. It is described as very attractive and out of the usual line of Kernville.
I don't know, you saw the pictures, it just
So anyway, and that's when we came across, Tammy does this research and she found this article and I'm reading it and I'm going, wait a minute, Maine and College, well that picture of Mrs. So-and-so, and from Judge Farmer, I'm pretty sure that's Maine and College behind her, and we looked at that picture and sure enough, there's a building that's gotta be the drugstore. Funny.
But it doesn't look above the usual.
No, it doesn't.
And
Maybe inside.
question for you.
Sure.
Some of your stuff there had, looked like they had a sidewalk.
Yeah.
Now, my memory's not what it used to be, that's for darn sure, but I don't ever remember sidewalk.
Well, there is one in front of the Mountain Inn. And, and right, in fact, it's in this version of the model. It's pretty clear in the photos, right there. It's not really a sidewalk as much as well, it is in this part, and it's in the photos. I mean, you can see it in the later photos of Old Kernville. Folks, come on. At least there's over here too on the other side, this one.
Oh, yeah.
But that's all. I haven't got them anywhere else.
I don't know, I just can't remember being there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there it is. And that's taken from photos.
Yeah.
again, when we're, building the model and, like I see, okay, I see this sign on the post and I go, oh, damn. And I Google it and sure enough, there's one, so I copy the picture from Google and use it, and so I don't have to construct it. It's amazing how we can find these things. They, all these little details.
What did the ATA stand for?
American Travel Association or something like that. Approved ATA hotel. There it is. Yes, yeah. Yeah. It's interesting what you can find, and I love some of the. There's there's a bunch of signs that we were going to make for the various businesses that were on this corner that we haven't finished yet. The details and some of the signs are just wonderful. Like the Midway, when it's the Midway, there's a big sign underneath the main bridge field, and then under that it says women's restroom. On the right side of the building, you look in the shadows and you see around the corner, there's a little lattice thing, and there's a bathroom door, and a sign at the entrance that says women only. So they were catering, imagine in those days, I mean, this is in the 20s, and traveling in a car was, a little bit iffy, and, and then so a guy, well, hey, look at people coming here, we'll just have a woman's bathroom. Maybe his wife told him, You want to up business?
So there was an ad for the Ringling Brothers Circus on one of the walls. Did they actually bring the circus into town?
Yeah, well, no, that's probably for Bakersfield.
Okay, I was just curious.
But yeah, and I put that, it's not the exact one,
Okay.
but I Googled the one that I can see on the photograph and found one that was close to it. And so, yeah, they plastered them on the barns.
Chuck, did you ever come across photos of, would be the east end of Nellie Den Street where the Chinese were all supposed to be living?
None that show Chinese buildings as such. I think they, by the 40s, which is where most of the pictures now came from, because they're from that Corps of Engineers collection of those houses. They don't show anything that I would say looks like that. I wish we had it. Yeah, I think in the photo that's in this book in Beneath the Lake, taken from the north end of town, shows the Star House in the foreground, and where I said I think that's the brewery and all. If you look way in the background, you can see rooftops over in that area of Green Street. There was definitely buildings over there, but you can't make out shapes or anything, just see roof lines. There were quite a few structures over there.
Any other questions for Chuck? Amazing. Amazing, Chuck.
It's really a pleasure doing this, a passion for me and Tammy too.
So how many terabytes of data do you have?
Well, I don't know, probably 7 or 8.
He has a hard drive drives daisy chained together under the main editing. I don't even know how many are under. They're all daisy chained together. That's a lot of data. It takes how long to load the model? Just to pull it up to get started to work?
About 30 minutes. Well, but my computer's it needs updating. The workstation, I've exceeded its capacity.